Hello, my name is Shah Zakram. I'm the founder of Her Pivot, a career mentorship storytelling platform for women in the mid and executive level. Her Pivot empowers mid-career and executive level women from diverse backgrounds to share their stories. Her Pivot focuses on connecting women who've made impactful pivots with those seeking to grow in their own careers. I am delighted to welcome Dana Linnet, an exceptional global leader and a dear friend, to Her Pivot today.
Thank you, Shaz. Happy to be here.
In almost every decade of your life, you've had a different career, with the exception of almost 2 decades in the Foreign Service. So I'd love to start by asking how you have navigated this and your philosophy around designing your career and reinventing yourself and staying really open to opportunities that came your way.
Thank you for that question. First, it's kind of daunting to think how many decades it's been. But yes, I think staying curious and saying yes to opportunities. I didn't think I wanted to go into the Foreign Service. I was kind of recruited by other Foreign Service folks I was meeting overseas who said, oh, these are the skills that we need in our diplomatic service. Would you take the exam? I was already working as a consultant and in the NGO world overseas. And I thought, well, why not? What do you have to lose? Take the exam. And you can always decide, if you want to actually take the leap or not, but at least know that you could get in. So I took the exam and I got in. And I think that's been sort of the narrative at every time. I think even within the Foreign Service, we change, posts and assignments every, 1 to 3 years, depending on your assignment. So there's always an opportunity, even within the diplomatic career, to reinvent yourself and to try new opportunities. And again, I landed in the private sector via, someone suggesting that I go there and that would be a great fit. And I think I just kept saying yes. And I think as women, we've put so many external sort of rules on what people think that it makes us say no. But really the secret of all of it is to say yes. Because if something is interesting and you're going to learn something and you're going to get something that benefits you and your personal mission, always say yes.
But your career didn't start off with, your first pivot was not Foreign Service.
No.
You were already working for over a decade as an advisor. And can you talk about what you did prior to that, before starting?
Yeah, I mean, before I joined the Foreign Service, again, I said yes. I married my college sweetheart and just picked up and told my parents I'm moving to Denmark. I'd never been to the country. I didn't speak the language. I had no clue what I was getting in for. I'm I took a vacation there. He proposed, and 3 months later I was back. I literally showed up at the airport and the immigration people were like, what are you doing here? I'm like, I'm getting married on Tuesday at the town hall. And they just were laughing. Okay. Those were the days where you could sort of, you didn't need a fiance visa and all that stuff. So yeah, I said yes and ended up there. And then, obviously you learn the language and you assimilate and you learn the culture of another place. I never thought I would leave Denmark. When you're that young, you think you're going to do the whole thing there. And as it turned out, I ended up getting a job in the private sector there. And I was like, okay, well, I kind of want to go back to get my master's degree. So I applied and got into University of Copenhagen and started the coursework. And I was kind of like, this is great, but I was a little bored. You know me, I have too much energy, to just go to class and sit there. So I got recruited to the Danish Atlantic Treaty Association and got very involved and active there, especially in Track 2 work. This was the mid-90s, and we were helping to support the youth in Central and Eastern Europe come out of the ashes of the Soviet Union and build ties to the West. And so that was a great assignment. I loved it. And it was through all of that that the folks in the U.S. Embassy saw me on the circuit. I was the international vice president for an NGO and running, conferences for ministers of all of the NATO and EU countries. Because there, the youth had a lot of opportunity. They were the ones running these conferences. They had so much financial and just physical support from the grown-ups, I would say. I mean, we were in our 20s, but, the established folks in power, like, gave us a lot of leeway and gave us a lot of empowerment. And that was such a great lesson. And I think they had that empowerment to take those leadership steps that I think we sometimes have here, but not always. But anyway, so, when they say, do you want to join this? Yes. Do you want to go here? Yes. Do you want to go on this study trip to Lithuania? Of course. You just say yes. And it's amazing what's there. And then, of course, I take the exam, but back then it took a long time. So I came back to Boston. My husband at the time got a postdoc position at Harvard. So reinventing myself again, I just started my own company out of Boston and started consulting with Tufts and Harvard and started helping U.S. companies navigate Central and Eastern Europe and then what was Russia in this completely Wild West situation. And it was great. I got to work for myself and be in the gym every day. My husband hated it because he wanted me to make more money. But I had that freedom. And then I got the call, okay, your clearance, your paperwork, everything, everything has all gone through. Back then it was nothing on a computer. You had to literally type or handwrite everything. It was ridiculous. So so I got in and I just moved. I said, well, I'm moving to Washington, and so I had this whole life of NGO work where I was working with literally the presidents and prime ministers, foreign and defense ministers of European countries as this Danish-speaking American master's student. I mean, it was ridiculous when you look back and think of that. And a lot of them are my friends today. And then, of course, when I got posted in Europe, I reconnected with a lot of them, which was great fun. But yeah, I said yes. I just was not really afraid of anything, and I figured I'll just figure out the details later. And I think a lot of women have a problem with that normally. We want to know every detail before we decide. And I think if you look at some of our male counterparts, maybe I was more like that. They just kind of jump in with confidence and they figure it out later. So maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm a teenage boy in disguise. I don't know. But yeah, I just say yes. Say yes.
Very important.
Go with the excitement. When someone gives you something fun and interesting, say yes. Yeah, that's the secret.
Well, that's a good segue to our next question. What are the challenges you've encountered in your professional career, and how have you navigated them?
I think the challenges I have are not unique to me. I think they're very common for everyone. I think they range from, when college, I had a job buying broccoli from Mexico with my high school Spanish, right? And the owner of the company in the Central Valley of California, he was a very old-fashioned guy, and he called everyone baby and honey and sweetheart. And I was just, as a UC Santa Cruz student, and this just rubbed me, feminist, and this just rubbed me the wrong way. And I just, one day, my roommate gave me a bug that said, men who call women baby, honey, and sweetheart should have their tiny little what's cut off. And I just had that on my desk. And of course, the guy came by and he saw it. I was fired immediately. But the best part was, it was a good lesson in that was not a good alignment for me. I shouldn't have to tolerate that. So I was really happy to be fired from that job because I was so what? Now I'm not sexually harassed every day and I don't have to put up with that. So I think people need to be unafraid as well. And so that was one example. And I think we've all had situations where as women we're talked over in meetings, we're treated as sort of the help or idiots. When I was in the State Department, I ran an office. I had 2 lieutenant colonels who worked for me, and and we go into these military meetings, and and they turn to my Army colonel and start talking to him, and I'm the boss, and he says, "No, you need to talk with her. You look at her, So I think we've all been in that situation. I think we've seen female colleagues. I've seen female colleagues, especially African-American female colleagues at the State Department, folks who either worked with me or I mentored, really the way that people spoke to them was shocking to me and something I thought was unbelievable. I was speechless, so I found myself jumping in and with their, obviously they were happy for me to do so. but just like saying, hey, that's not right. Like, you can't talk to my teammate that way, or hey, just you're not being professional or correct here. So we've seen that. I mean, there's, of course, sexism in the workplace, and then the mediocrity, I think when you're a high-performing woman, like when you want to be around other high-performing people because that makes you better. So you always want to be the dumbest person in the room, but sometimes if you're not, and you're like, your supervisor is not the A team, it's very frustrating. And I think a lot of high-performing women go into that. But again, you have to remove yourself from these situations and not be fearful. You have to, in that case, say no. So we went to say yes. When you encounter these behaviors, it's really important to set the boundaries and say no, and not be afraid to be like not there in that position anymore. You have to be actively looking for the right fit and your right environment. You can't always control your environment, but to the extent that you have choices, know you have choices. And I think sometimes we feel we don't have choices.
Yeah, women feel trapped.
We always, there's this like, oh, we're trapped, or I need this for a promotion, or I need this for the salary. And, nobody needs to, no one needs to put up with that. I mean, yes, if you feel that way, look and get out there, get your name out there, and start getting yourself out of that situation. You have choices.
Yeah, that's a very important thing, not to feel trapped and know that one has choices. What advice would you give to people starting out in your field? In specifics, how would you advise women navigating the male-dominant field of defense, aerospace, and emerging technologies, which are...
Yeah, and even diplomacy. We need women negotiators. We need women executives. And you have to start somewhere. So you got to dip your toe in. You've got to, after you say yes, then you have to do your very, very best. Like, you just have to deliver excellence. Like, there's no shortcuts. You have to be a ninja time manager. You have to set boundaries on your time, on your work. And that doesn't mean like saying, I'm not going to do this. We're in public service. Like, if you're in public service, hey, I've spent the night in my office, okay? I spent the night in my office on 9/11. I didn't come home when Benghazi hit. We all have the crisis, management, but that should not be the default on the daily. So on the daily, set boundaries and know, when to come in.
What advice do you have for mid-career women trying to advance their careers to higher level positions?
Yes, I mean, I think this also touches on your previous question as well. Don't be afraid to be the only woman in the room. And if you think about a stereotype like, oh, I'm the only one in the room, they're going to treat me like this, just stop that thinking. You have to see it as a benefit. You have to see it as an opportunity. When I was the only woman in a room full of special operations, leadership, generals and colonels and whatever, because I was the only woman in the room, they assumed that I knew my stuff. But then I really did have to know my stuff. So you have to know your stuff. If you feel yourself buying into some of these stereotypes, you have to stop your inner monologue. You have to stop that thinking, that negative thinking. And then I would say to women starting out in their careers, go to things that excite you and just do it really well. And the second thing is just get to know people, get to know like what makes them tick, like what's their job, how can you support them in their job, not just how they can support you, but like how can you be of service to your teammate? Check in with your teammates. If they're having a bad day, hey, I'll take that off of you today. I'll do that work for you. You go home and tend to your kids or take a bath or, lay in a dark room with the lights out. But, just check in with people, get to know people. I think building the relationships, personal relationships are so pivotal, whether in business or whether in public service. I mean, it's the personal relationships that help you grow, know yourself, be better teammates, better public servants, better executives. So, yeah, that's kind of the advice. Like
the human touch,
the human touch,
connections.
Exactly. Like, do your job and do it well. The human connections. know the organization, and also know how the money moves. You know, everything's a financial interest, even in government. So like people, money, personal touch, and perform with excellence. And, you got to respect people.
So are there any resources that you could share with women on how they can professionally develop their skills?
I think they're all around. There's
some that you've used
there
in
are
your
so
own
many
life.
There are so many books out there. I'm actually writing a book at some. I'm kind of in the midst of it, but I think the title nobody can steal it because it's already under. But it's called Meet Your Ultimate Mentor, because I get asked these questions all the time, and I get them asked of like entry level, mid level, executive level. I've had like 3- and 4-star retiring military folks, say, hey, I'm coming now. What do you think? So I think, meeting, finding wherever you're at, I'm working on the book. But as far as books out there are so many books about empowerment for female executives. I couldn't really point to one. Unfortunately, I have the scars and the hard knocks, but I know a lot of women have benefited.
And a lot of these professional certifications from institutions, like certificates, cost. And so women have to figure out a way to get their current employer to pay for those. There is a budget in every organization for professional development. Women tend
there
not
should
to ask.
be. I don't know if there is.
Tend not to ask such questions because they don't want to be seen as asking rather than giving. So
no, women, you have to ask. To your point, Shah, you have to ask. You have to invest in yourself. I belong to like the Mind Valley platform and the Masterclass platform. There's for a couple $100 a year, you have endless courses on, everything from meditation and emotional management to growing your business and scaling to 100 million to time management and using AI tools. Like these platforms are filled with even negotiation and interpersonal skill. I think there's even one about like some CIA officers who put one together on like the art of like intelligence and how you deploy that in the corporate setting. So there are so many platforms out there. Again, for a few $100, invest in yourself. That's like a year's worth of Starbucks, or maybe for some of us, 3 months worth of Starbucks. But you have to invest in yourself, and you have to explain the value to your employer of why they should invest in you. Like, hey, I want to be here longer than just this year. I want to make a difference. I want to be a better executive. I want to be on this track. Ask for that support. And ask them to make that investment. And I guarantee you they will.
So, that brings me to the networking component, how important it is for women to network with each other. So do you have any advice on how women would seek out those networking opportunities in their workplace or in the cities they live in?
Absolutely. I belong to an executive group called Chief. It's for women CEOs and C-suites. Again, investing in ourselves and creating that nationwide network where like we have access to incredible talent and peer-to-peer mentoring. But honestly, there are so many groups within most workplaces where you can, where you have these women executive leaders. There are Facebook meetups. Literally you just start Googling and you find the one that aligns best with you and your career. Some women want to be within their sector. So if you're in STEM, doing like bioengineering, maybe you want to do that. But maybe you're surrounded by that all day. So maybe you want to meet with women who are mastering other skill sets. So find out what skill sets you want to work on that year and then seek that out. I would say I wouldn't even limit it just to the sisterhood. That's been super important for me to have that, just that support. And knowing that those women have my back. But it's also important to have male mentors. And I will say, in my career, the best mentors I've ever had, except for maybe 2, have all been men. They've all. In fact, I had one woman at State who was a whole like really backstabbed me and like gossiped about me to my boss, things that were confidential to her. because they were chummy. Don't exclude men, because often men also have the power, they have the purse strings,
great sponsors.
They have the influence, and they spot the talent. I mean, we're coming here from DACOR Bacon House, which was opened by Secretary George Shultz. And way back in the 80s, when it wasn't cool and there was no DEI, he was out there promoting women, from Ambassador Ridgway to Condi Rice and so on. So, those men are hugely important as well as women.
Yeah, this has been a recurring theme in my interviews, that men are sponsors of women, take them under their mentorship and allow them to excel.
They really create the seat at the table. That's the interesting thing.
Yeah.
They create the seats, like you come to the National Security Council and you sit here. You take this, they advocate for you in the assignment meetings at the State Department, or when you're when you're being talked about in your reputation, or, if you're in corporate America, it's the same. People talk about corridor reputation in government, but it works the same in executive life. Everyone knows who everyone is.
And now you as an advisor are being referred to by these very people you've worked with for clients and for projects.
Yeah, so my company, I built a platform of almost 300 people and 6 independent companies under the Summit Group DC, and we deliver under so many competencies. But except for maybe one or two that found me on the internet, every single one of my clients has come to me through a referral of people who were existing clients or who had worked with me and said, "Oh, you can do the thing that we need." And usually, thankfully for me, they were like, people were like, "Do not hesitate to hire this person. Do not hesitate. This, she will get results. They will get results. The team is good." So I think yes, networking is imperative, but don't be fake about it. Be genuine. Try not to be transactional. Like, I just want to get from you. Like, try to offer something that you have as well, like offer to help other people. Mm-hmm. It's amazing how many doors even mid-level women can open for even senior women, or, you just have to, if you have the network, everyone can write an email.
And you're an example. You do that all the time, and I've seen you do that in your daily life. And Dana is also the founder of the DC chapter of Chief.
I was a founding member.
Founding member of the DC chapter. So that
one of many. I wasn't alone. Yeah,
one of many. But I mean,
Hundreds,
it's pretty incredible that you're part of that network, which promotes women, with one another.
Another thing I'll say though is don't overextend yourself, because Shaz knows I'm a really bad example of this. I think it's important when you have to be very deliberate about what you want to join and how you want to engage and how you want to allocate your time, because it's so easy. I say yes to too many things sometimes, as you know, and now I'm like trying to unwind that and say, no, I'm overextended. If I do one more thing, it's going to detract from delivering for my clients. So I walked away from a lot of things too. You have to always find the balance of the networking that's the effective dose amount that's going to be beneficial to you without draining you, because especially for introverts, it can be draining.
So that was the answer to my question about burnout.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you got to really, with burnout, you got to, sorry, go ahead and ask your question.
This is great. This is organically, happening, this conversation, which is exactly what these fireside career mentorship chats are meant to be. Lessons shared with other women so that they can take the steps they need to advance their careers or advance in their careers.
Yes.
I'm going to ask a difficult question, and this is one that I get questioned about a lot. Why are most companies dead set against hiring someone in their 50s or 60s? This is about ageism, right? And increasingly in their 40s now, which is very surprising. Despite equal opportunity policies, what can be done to combat ageism and ensure that women of all ages are able to thrive in their careers?
So this is a fun question, because I was being recruited to a executive global vice president job for a Silicon Valley company. And I had asked the same question to the recruiter, like, I'm in my 50s, like, why is Silicon Valley coming after an old lady like me? And I think,
hardly old.
And I think, because that's not what you typically hear. You typically hear they only want young people, and they only want, and he said simple, like, you understand technology, you understand the public sector, and you can get them the result that they want with the leadership that they need. They've never had that leadership before, or at least not anything that's succeeded. And so I think what I would say to your question is, obliterate that question. Obliterate the notion that everywhere is ageist and that people aren't hiring. That's not the case. There are two things happening. I think women are self-selecting them out of these positions because they think that, and that's dangerous to your career. The second thing is we buy into that when really companies don't hire you for your age. They only deem you as old if you haven't learned, invested in yourself to learn. Like, I won't be replaced by AI. If I'm going to be replaced, it's by a person who knows how to use AI. But guess what? I have spent like 3 weekends in boot camps learning AI, and I've mastered ChatGPT prompting and Claude prompting and all this stuff. So I'm not going to be replaced by a younger person. I'm a master prompter. And I learned it from beta testers that taught that boot camp who beta tested the AI. So I think if you take the time to learn these new skills, you will not be seen as old. Now, if you walk into the office and go, oh, I can't really do this and I don't want to do that, and someone show me how to do everything all the time, and you're not willing to sit down and figure it out, or ask someone to just sit with you and like figure it out real quick. But like, that's the problem. It's people hire women of any age, or a person of any age, if they can deliver value. And you have to know what they value. And if they value someone who has your skills, and your skills are not obsolete and can make them money, make them sales, grow their company, lead the team to success, they will hire you whether you're 30 and a badass, or they will hire you whether you're 60 and a badass. They don't care. They want to see that you're the right person that has that mindset. It's a mindset, and it's a toolbox.
Well, thank you for that detail. That talked a lot about resources women could utilize, like, doing a 3-week boot camp.
Oh, 3-day. It was like 3 days.
I mean, that's just incredible, right? So
it was free. It was completely free.
So free resources, professional development toolkits, everything available. You just have to do the research to find them. So Dana, we're at the last question. What is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
So that would have had to have been from my Lockheed Martin CEO at the time, Marilyn Hewson, who said our 3 company values were always do what's right, respect others, and perform with excellence. And I think if we do those 3 things, you'll never go wrong.
Well, thank you very much. It was a delight to have you on Her Pivot today, and this interview hopefully will be helpful to other women in transitions and trying to figure out their pivots. Thank you, and we'll be back sometime soon with a new interview.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it, Shaz.